Ros Harvey is the founding CEO of SenseCo, which is developing new commercial sensing technologies and services to transform agriculture. SenseCo is a spin-off company of the highly regarded SenseT program based at the University of Tasmania, for which Ros was the founding director. SenseT and SenseCo work as an ecosystem, with SenseT advancing scientific research and discovering new ways for sensing technology and data analytics, that was close, wasn't it, to make industry more efficient, competitive and sustainable. SenseCo works as the commercial vehicle to get research outcomes out of the lab and in the hands of industry. Ros was previously the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Economic Development, Tourism and the Arts in Tasmania. During a 15-year international career, Ros also founded the Global Better Work program. This did fascinate me, a partnership between the World Bank Group and the United Nations International Labour Organisation. Better Work strives to improve the working conditions for apparel factory workers in developing countries, while helping to make global supply chains more competitive. It is internationally recognised as a landmark in corporate social responsibility, global supply chains and international development. Ros continues her involvement in this field as a special advisor to the International Financial Corporation, Compliance Ombudsman, on labour standards in its $15 billion annual loan portfolio. Ros is presenting today on the next generation sensing technology. Ladies and gentlemen, Ros Harvey.
Thanks very much. I don't think I need to actually do a presentation because Andy's actually told you all about it. It's quite a long introduction. But seriously, it's a pleasure to be here today at this Nuffield conference. You really are the future of agriculture, and it's really incredibly exciting. I have to say, I'm still adjusting to seeing so many farmers in suits. I'm feeling decidedly underdressed because, you know, I'm used to normally when I engage with the rural community, people are in jeans and out there in their boots and working. So it's a bit of a surprise when I walked in the room. And Jane tells me that you all have these fabulous Nuffield ties as well. So I did just think you had very similar dress sets until I realised that there was actually some corporate branding going on. Anyway, look, I want to talk to you today about SenseT and SenseCo, which is a really exciting program. It's a partnership program between the University of Tasmania, CSIRO and state government with funding from the federal government. But I'd like to also just recognise actually Mike Bryce, and Mike, if you just stand up. Mike is actually the director of SenseT, so we're the ecosystem in action. I'm the CEO now of the commercial arm of the program. So what I want to do is talk about technology, but actually really what I want to talk about is people and how people use technology, because I think one of the really important things that drives and motivates us is technology is all really exciting, data is the next big thing that everyone speaks about, but really it's meaningless unless you can distill it into something that helps people make better decisions and is actually used as a tool rather than, you know, in some sense of sort of this impersonal automation. It's really something, particularly when we work with agriculture, is thinking about how are farmers actually going to use data and knowledge, and how do we do that in a way that brings our own abilities and skills and incredible depth and competence and combines it with a new tool that technology gives. So I wanted to start off by actually, and I'm looking to my colleague Mark here, I'm hoping he's going to be able to help me out here. He is there, thank you Mark. Just listen to this for a minute. No, it's not a sick patient. It's actually the heartbeat of Aussie the oyster. And Aussie the oyster is actually the city is down off Salamanca Wharf in Hobart, and this really for me epitomises what we're really talking about with SenseT and SenseCo, because Aussie's actually wearing a sensor developed by CSIRO as part of one of our aquaculture projects. And it's measuring Aussie's heartbeat, his temperature, feeding patterns, where he's sitting in the water column. And to me, this epitomises everything that we're trying to achieve, because what we're able to do is link the heartbeat of Aussie together with a whole lot of environmental data and a whole lot of information that's coming from aquaculture farming to actually give us insights into how do we actually optimise production and well-being of the animals that we're working with and actually drive economic benefit. So for me, the potential is limitless when you start thinking about we're able to actually link up the heartbeat of an oyster with the internet. So we've already heard this morning, and I thought it was really very interesting presentations about the enormous value of the agricultural industry. We all know that it's part of this, there's a huge global demand for food that we can see that we're going to have to produce. One of the things we talk about is we're going to have to produce as much food in the next 40 years as we have in the last 8,000. That's a phenomenal figure. And we know that data is actually also driving innovation in agriculture, forestry and fishing, and contributed something like $1.1 billion to the Australian economy just last year. So it's this enormous opportunity. The question is really how do we actually optimise that? And so what we're doing with SenseT is we're actually building a knowledge infrastructure that pulls together all this data from many different places, public, private sector, from research, and puts it into a single place. And so this allows people like Sarah here, Sarah Abdelwartha, who's a young researcher from CSIRO, who's working on that oyster sensing project. So she's actually using that data from the oyster to help farmers understand the physiology of oysters and how they react to different environmental conditions. And listening to Ewan's presentation this morning, one of the Nuffield scholars who's working in the oyster industry, this is a really important issue. One of the big challenges in the oyster industry is actually disease and managing for a risk they call POMS. And because oysters sit in the shell, it's actually pretty hard to know how they're travelling. And so to be able to actually take this sort of data and combine it with other information means that we have very powerful tools to help us manage not only production optimisation, but also for disease risk. And just to give you another example, as I said, I'm going to talk to you about people and not data, which is unusual from a technology presentation, but I really want to focus on the importance of really putting people centrally in how we actually use technology. So in this case, SenseT infrastructure is actually being used by Jeremy Cairns, who's a farmer in the Ringarooma catchment area up in the northeast of Tasmania. And he's working together with researchers like Joanna Ellison on managing together how we actually deal with water flows. So we have a group of farmers who are working on a water catchment in the northeast of Tasmania, pulling together real-time data, again, from a whole lot of different sources. And what we're able to do is monitor in real-time water flows. And so when water flows start going down below environmental levels, what we've been able to do is use this system to actually intervene and release water into the system. This gives incredible power to farming communities as we bring it to scale, because what it means is instead of waiting for a regulator to make a decision, putting out a cease to draw order, which everyone, if it happens at a sensitive time, can be a disaster, it allows a community of farmers to actually collectively have input into how they manage that water resource. So let me give you another example, and this is going back to our oyster story. So not only do we have researchers using the data, we also have regulators. So in this case, Ali actually manages what's called the Shellfish Quality Assurance Program. And so Ali's job is to make sure that we only harvest oysters when it's safe. And what she's doing is using the same data that we're pulling together through these networks so that she only closes and opens when we really need to, and to protect consumers from potential contaminants that could be filtered by oysters. So again, another really practical way that we can use data. And just to change the theme here, this is Mike Buckby. I don't think Mike was a Nuffield scholar. He should be. Mike is actually a very innovative farmer from the northwest of Tasmania, and he's holding in his hands there 2 bottles of water called Cape Grim. Some of you may have heard of Cape Grim brand. And Mike is actually selling that water on the eastern seaboard of Australia for $22 a bottle, which is a bit of a surprise. The reason Mike's able to do that is he uses, again, sensor data, real-time data, to show it's the cleanest air and water in the world. And then what he does is only harvest when the wind comes from the south and the rain comes from the south, because it's coming from that very beautiful, pure, pristine place called Antarctica, just south of here. And then he makes that information available through his supply chain to his consumers. And that's how he's able to achieve a brand premium. And Mike's just recently concluded a deal in China with a distribution chain there. And Mike tells the very funny story of the Chinese supplier came to visit him and said, you know, well, let's just start small. And how about an order of, you know, however many cartons it was. And he turned around to me and he said, Ros, that just means I have to double production. That's starting small in China. And so they've actually had to expand the water bottling plant up in the northwest of Tasmania. So many different ways that we can use real-time data to not only improve production optimisation, but also to work with researchers, also to work with regulators, and also to work with marketing. And when we talked this morning about the importance of China and globally about how we actually achieve premium for this incredible produce that we grow here in Australia, we have a new project that we're working on called Pathways to Market that's using that data again to look at how do we demonstrate the provenance of where our food comes through to consumers in target markets, and how do we track its progress through the supply chain so that we can use data to help us actually optimise that as well. So in this journey that we've had with SenseT, which is now a couple of years in, we've got a very strong commitment to industry-led research and putting really farmers at the driving focus of what we actually work on. And as part of that process, we realised that farmers were really crying out for better, more affordable sensing technology and smartphone apps that were easy to use. And in fact, someone asked me, what is SenseCo really about? Well, SenseCo is really about taking those research outcomes and really giving data to people in a way that helps them make better decisions, access to data they've never had before, and also at an affordable price. But most importantly is not the data, actually. It's actually how we actually create decision support systems and apps that people can use to help them make better decisions. So you will know Matt, and Matt's speaking after the break there, he's up the back with Shelley. And so Matt's we're currently doing a trial on 20 farms across Tasmania, including vineyards and broadacre pasture, dairy. We're looking at annuals, biannuals, berries, floriculture. And what we're testing is really a new sensing technology and smartphone apps that, as well as that big data platform that I was describing, actually manages the flow of the data from the sensors and how it gives it back to the farmers. So one of the sites we have this on is on Matt's site, and I would sort of acknowledge Matt and Shelley what a fantastic job they have been doing in helping us with this research and being, advocates and ambassadors for the technology. So the systems that we're developing have developed a design for high density sensing so that we can actually get real-time information from microclimates across a property. And then this data is taken either back through 3G backhaul, through the NBN, if they would hurry up with their rollout. And each installation can support thousands of different sensing points and includes sensors that measure soil moisture, temperature at various depths, above and ground temperature, relative humidity, solar radiation, and importantly, leaf wetness. And what's really important about what we're talking about is how do we, and I said at the beginning, is about how do we bring new data which is of a much higher density. And this really matters in many farming businesses. I was recently visiting Sean, the manager of Houston's, which produces cut lettuce bag, sells into Coles and Woolies under its own brand, but also under a generic brand. And the difference of a temperature of 1.5 degrees between two fields can make a really big difference to them in terms of how long the cycle is, whether it's they move from a cycle of 30 days in summer through to sort of 70, 80 day cycles when it's colder. And understanding the microclimate means that they can optimise production, how much they're cropping. As Sean tells me that every morning they have a debate between the QA manager and the production manager is the leaf wetness too high or low, because if you cut it when it's still wet, its shelf life goes down. So really giving farmers microclimate information, but really importantly in a way that's easily accessible and understandable. And this is the heart of the issue. So the apps you're seeing there are part of our alpha trial. So we're going to alpha with these applications both on the phone and also on the computer. And we're really spending our time understanding how people use data to help them make better decisions and then iterating that. So we don't do it just once. We say, here, as part of the alpha trials, please trial this, and then capture the feedback and say, well, how could this be improved so it really actually helps in decision making? So SenseT and SenseCo, I hope I've tried to give you an overview of how we work side by side. And really what we're hoping to build is Tasmania as a test bed for agricultural innovation. And in SenseT, we will have the scientists working directly with industry, using data and technology to address some of its biggest challenges. Then Sense Co, the part that I run, which is currently 100% owned by the university, is really the vehicle to get the results out of the lab, if you like, into people's hands, and doing that faster. So some of the research that's already underway includes attaching cows to monitor health and behaviour, allowing farmers to pinpoint when a cow is in oestrus, predicting pasture growth, making decisions around fertiliser, when should we plant, when should we crop, disease warning for things like botrytis in grape growing, tools that frost alerts to help particularly soft fruit, it's a really big issue. So tools that allow farmers along a water catchment, which I described, to better schedule irrigation, and through to looking inside oysters and salmon to look at their well-being and health. So it's a really rich research agenda, which we want to have this incredibly strong connection between industry and have industry and the end users, in this case farmers, really driving what the priorities are and quickly getting it out of the lab into people's hands through the commercial arm. So that's our vision. And so what it's really about is doing more with less. So if we go back to where we started today in this big global vision, we know by 2050 there'll be 9 billion people on this planet, and 1/3 of that population is going to be living on less than $2 a day. And so what we need to do is produce, we know 75% more food than we currently do. We have no more arable land, and we're facing unprecedented sort of challenges in terms of resources. So really, how are we going to make that work? We actually think technology is part of that answer. It's not all the answer, of course, but it's part of the answer. But the key to our success will be working with leaders like yourselves, who really are at the forefront of innovation and helping us co-create, helping us direct our research effort where it's going to make the biggest difference to you as farmers, so that we can get the biggest impact for Australia and, we hope globally. So we're really delighted to be here, and I've been talking with Jane about how do we tap this incredible network, which is the Nuffield network, with many of you thinking constantly about some of these challenges. How can we potentially work together, both in the research and in the commercial side, to try and tap that thinking and direct our effort to where it can have the biggest impact? And so we're keen to explore that further and have talked about having perhaps a little breakout session after the coffee break to see whether there are people interested in exploring some of that together with us. So thank you very much.